Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Mrs. Lazar. I'm with Community Awareness and Prevention Association. Really excited that we have Emily Reising today with the American Lung Association. She's going to be talking to you about the impact of e-cigarettes. So just before we get started, I just wanted to mention a few things. If you have not already, please put your name, the teachers, please put your name in the chat box so that we can just make sure that everybody is able to log in and is doing okay. So right now I see thank you that we have Clairgett, Palumbo, Gardner, Behrens, Mrs. Smith, Ferrante, Harness Classroom, Franklin, Mauser, McDonald. Um, we have Borquin is in, fantastic. And we have several students too. We have D. Reynolds. So I think we're good. And we have a lot of kids logging in too from home. So just a few things that I want to say before we get started. I wanted to let you all know that if you have questions, please post them in the Q&A and not in the chat. The Q&A will remain anonymous. So if you have a question throughout the presentation for Emily, just post it in the Q&A and she will be able to address those questions as the presentation is occurring. The other thing that we want to make sure is that once the presentation is over, if you are in person in the classroom, you will be given an evaluation at the end. So please fill those out. And I apologize, I didn't put your name on those, a space for your name. So please sign your name on those students. And you will be entered into winning a $25 gift card. For the online students, I will post the Google form in the chat box at the end of the presentation for you to click on and to take that exit survey or that exit evaluation once we are finished. I think we're ready to go. I think I've said everything that I need to say. We're super excited about you being with us and really also very excited that we have Emily to join us today. So I'm going to turn it over to Emily and thank you again for participating. And remember, if you have those questions in your class, just the teacher, you will have to post them in the Q&A for the students if they have a question during the presentation. Other than that, I'm going to turn it over to Emily. Thank you all so much and have a great day.
Thanks, Kelly. I'm just gonna make my video smaller here. And like Kelly said, my name is Emily Reising. I am a health promotion specialist with the American Lung Association for the state of Ohio. And I do sit in the Cleveland office, but of course today I'm coming to you from my home. So I just wanna go over some things that will highlight the impact of e-cigarettes, both for youth. I know we've got some parents maybe dialed in, so we are gonna go over some highlights for parents as well as schools. And like Kelly mentioned, please enter any questions into the Q&A box. I will check those periodically throughout. We'll also have some time at the end to go over some questions as well. Miles, I seem to be stuck. I can't advance my slides. There we go. Okay, so what is an e-cigarette? For a lot of you, this might be something that you're already familiar with, but we're going to go over just about everything here to get a good overview. So up here in the cartoon picture, you can see the different devices broken down into different categories. Then you've got some pictures of some of those real life examples here as well. And you can tell that the manufacturers of these are really smart and know how to cater to everyone. So if you want to, use something that looks like a pipe, there's something out there. If you want something that's disposable, there's something for you. You can see the tank models here. On the bottom is a bigger tank model. Up here at the top is a smaller, kind of slim tank model. Those you refill yourself. So you get the liquid, you put those into the device, and then you use that device as one. You can see this cigarette here is a disposable e-cigarette. That always kind of baffles me because trying to get away from cigarettes, people think these are healthier, and then you want something that looks like a cigarette. And then over here on the side, we've got our ever popular Juul. So these are rechargeable e-cigarettes. You can see the little pieces here are the cartridges that come in flavors, and we're going to talk about that a little bit further. But this is just sort of what those e-cigarettes look like. Really, it's just something that contains a battery and a solution of nicotine, flavors, other chemicals that aren't really regulated but can be really harmful to you. And they come in a bunch of different styles. Some might look kind of like a USB. We know the Juuls look pretty slim and sleek. Some are really easy to be hidden and concealed. So again, unfortunately, there's something out there for everyone because the manufacturers really want to sell these and to get these into people's hands and to get them addicted to them. So how does it work? Here is a general snapshot of what an e-cigarette looks like from the inside. Of course, all those models have a different style, but essentially they all work the same. So things to note here, all of them have a battery because that is what ignites that heating element to make the liquid into a vapor. So you can see here that microprocessor is next. Again, that battery controls that. That is what starts that heating and that ignition in this cartridge down here at the end. So in those rechargeable models or something where the cartridge can be replaced, this is the part that would come off. That is what holds the nicotine, any other chemicals. Especially, we need to note that propylene glycol that is mentioned here, that is what the nicotine is dissolved in because all of these devices are holding that in a liquid form. So you might hear of e-juice, e-liquid, that is what either is refilled or replaced. And again, that's where we're holding all those chemicals, that nicotine, especially that propylene glycol that we'll come back to in a minute, but that is where the liquid is ignited and turned into a vapor that you're smoking. What else might be in an e-cigarette? So unfortunately, for a while, and really still today, the chemicals and what is put into an e-cigarette are largely unregulated. I'm going to go over some of the history behind e-cigarettes a little bit later, but really, the manufacturers have not had to, and still to a degree don't have to tell you what is in that product. So that's really dangerous, that you are putting something into your body and someone is not being truthful or explaining exactly what is going into your body when you're using these. The manufacturers care about getting your money. They want you to get addicted. They want to take your money. They want to have that money for a long time. They don't really care about your health. So, what I just mentioned on that last slide, again, nicotine is held in that liquid solution with propylene glycol and oftentimes a vegetable glycerin. These are chemicals that the FDA has said are generally recognized as safe, but for ingestion only. So they might be in other foods or products that you eat or drink, but as soon as they're vaporized and they become that aerosol, they become really, really harmful, and you get a lot of lung diseases from them. So we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But just to know that they're really clever and tricky with kind of what they're putting in, that something might be safe in one form, but as soon as it is heated and turned into that aerosol that you're breathing into your body, things change and becomes really dangerous to you. Some of the other things that you can see here that are in that aerosol, again, nicotine is the biggest component. Like I said, the manufacturers want you to get addicted to this. They want you to continue to buy and buy and buy their products, but nicotine is extremely harmful. We know that that is the addictive chemical that's going to get you hooked on these products. That's what's in all kinds of other tobacco products, traditional cigarettes, cigars, dip tobacco, anything like that. That's what keeps you coming back. But unfortunately, it is also extremely harmful to developing brains. So I don't think any of you high schoolers are over the age of 18 yet, so your brains are still developing. So if you are using an e-cigarette, you are actively putting something into your body that is hurting your brains while they're still developing. Our brains develop until about the age of 18. So they're really kind of in a vulnerable state right now. And you don't want to add anything to that that's going to harm that development. What other kind of things can we find in this aerosol? So you can see here, there's ultrafine particles or heavy metals such as nickel, tin, and lead. Those are things that are going to sit in your lungs and create irritation, inflammation, lead to a lifetime of chronic disease, Might be a lung disease, might be cardiovascular disease, but really, if you're starting this early, you're going to have problems for the rest of your life. Might be in your lung, might be in your heart, might be something else that we haven't even discovered yet, but you're putting things into your body that are going to have a lasting impact or are going to sit in your body for a long time. Some of the other things that we're seeing here, you can see that volatile organic compounds are present in that aerosol that you are inhaling. What's a volatile organic compound? That can be something like benzene. If you're not familiar with what benzene is, it is found in car exhaust. I don't know about you guys, but I am not going out to willingly and actively breathe in car exhaust because that's gross. But if you're using an e-cigarette, you're essentially doing that. Some other cancer-causing chemicals that we know are present in aerosols of e-cigarettes and that liquid as well. We get all kinds of aldehydes, so think of formaldehyde. Those are really, really dangerous. So formaldehyde is dangerous at a very, very low level. Once you start using e-cigarettes over and over, you're adding up that level, and that's going to become really dangerous to your lungs and really your entire body overall. Aldehydes as a group are the most toxic of the tobacco smoke substances because they cause cardiovascular disease. We also see some chemicals like acrolein. This is present in weed killer. Again, not something that you are normally putting into your body until you start using an e-cigarette. Acrolein can cause irreversible lung damage. And then down here at the bottom, we also see flavorings such as diacetyl. That is linked to a serious lung disease. So it's got a little picture of a popcorn box there, and we'll talk more about what the connection is with popcorn and diacetyl in a little bit, but essentially that can cause an irreversible lung damage or lung problems as well. Things you don't necessarily think about when you are a teenager, but I'm sure none of you are wanting to have lung conditions for the rest of your life, are wanting to have cardiovascular disease for the rest of your life. You want to get through high school, make some friends, have fun, maybe get to college, have a job. You're not thinking about necessarily what those health concerns are, but you need to if you are using e-cigarette because you don't really know what you're putting into your body. So those were some of the chemicals. Let's see what they can do. We do have unintended injuries that can result from using e-cigarettes. So this picture up here in the top right, these folks were not really thinking about those unintended injuries. Remember at the beginning, I told you that there is a battery in all e-cigarettes that have to heat and ignite that liquid that you're using and breathing. Basically, these men experienced some battery explosions, some fires, really dangerous to them. And you can see they're all hospitalized. They've all had some serious burns and damage to their body. Another unintended injury that we don't always think of is poisoning from that e-liquid or that e-juice. This can happen sometimes if a younger sibling gets a hold of it, thinks it's cool, thinks that it says cotton candy on it, so they drink it. They are poisoned from that liquid. Irreversible lung damage. I've talked about this a lot. Of course, I'm coming from the American Lung Association, so this is of great concern to us, but you can see down here at the bottom, this image is to show you that kind of popcorn lung. So why it's called popcorn lung. Diacetyl is a chemical that is used in flavorings, and it was used in a factory where they made microwave popcorn to add in that kind of buttery, delicious popcorn taste that we like. But the employees were breathing it as they were making the bags, and they were getting sick. They were getting a lot of respiratory disease and being hospitalized from this. So they figured out it was the diacetyl that they were using. They stopped putting that in the microwave popcorn bags, but it kind of stuck as this popcorn lung impact, that if you breathe in this diacetyl chemical, it can have really irreversible damage to your lungs. So you can see here, we're getting a lot of mucus production in the bronchi. Mucus is going to slow your airflow and just make it really hard for you to breathe. It's going to make you kind of mucusy and phlegmy, which is gross. But you can also see in this smaller picture here that the alveoli sacs at the end of your bronchioles are damaged. They're scarred. So if you've taken a biology class, you know that this is kind of where that oxygen transfer happens, where a lot of the breathing happens. Once you scar this part of your lungs, they don't really recover from that. So you are just over time, just scarring and damaging more and more parts of your lungs that aren't going to recover and aren't going to get back. So think as a 14, 15-year-old, what you can be setting yourself up for the rest of your life. You're going to have just decreased and worse lung damage and lung capacity, because this isn't really something you recover from, or the alveoli come back into full strength. In this middle picture here, you can see this is a chest x-ray of someone with acute respiratory distress syndrome. So you can see normally how clear the lungs are, how much you can see. In someone with acute respiratory distress syndrome, you can see how little of the lung is clear and viable. Acute respiratory distress syndrome is very similar to something called wet lung, and this is due to that propylene glycol and vegetable glycerin that I talked about at the beginning. So that's something that's present in nearly all, if not all, e-cigarettes, because that is what the nicotine is dissolved in that liquid. So everyone is getting this, everyone is breathing this in, and essentially doing this kind of damage to their lungs. You may have heard a story a couple of years ago, a teen who started using e-cigarettes, used them for about 3 weeks, and then she developed some serious conditions and symptoms. She had to be hospitalized. She was having a lot of trouble breathing, coughing, just extreme shortness of breath. She was hospitalized, diagnosed with wet lung, had to be put on a ventilator, and had fluid drained from her lungs. So this was a normally very healthy teen who didn't have any other issues with her health. She had started using an e-cigarette for just 3 weeks and had to be hospitalized with a ventilator and had fluid drained from her lungs. So you can see how quickly the impact can happen when you start using at a high rate. Of course, cardiovascular disease is always present when you are inhaling chemicals. Your lungs and your heart work very closely together. So it's putting a lot of stress on your heart, which is really hard when you're younger, because your heart needs to carry you through the rest of your life. If you're going to play sports, if you're going to be active, you want your heart to be working in the best shape it is. So you don't want to damage it really, really early on. You can see up here, this is a really gross picture of some oral health disease concerns that you can have. Think about it just for a second. It's pretty obvious you're putting all these chemicals and these gross ingredients right into your mouth. So things are going to deposit on your teeth, your gums, your tongue. They're going to settle in the back of your throat. Of course, they're going to move down to your lungs, but you've just got a whole pathway where these chemicals and these ingredients that should not be ingested and inhaled can deposit and cause a lot of issue. And then of course, we've got addiction. Addiction is really problematic because, like I said, nicotine is present in all of these devices, and the manufacturers want to get you addicted. But the problem is you can be addicted for years down the road. You can also start using another product because you started using an e-cigarette. You might want to use a traditional cigarette, cigars, dip tobacco, something like that. So it's really setting you up for just problems down the road. All right, I'm going to check and see if we've got any questions. Not yet. Okay, so I said I wanted to go over a little bit of history. You understand now what is in an e-cigarette, what they might be hiding from you, what you aren't aware of, and kind of at a very simple level, what that can do to your body. So I just want to give you some background on kind of where e-cigarettes came from, why they're still out there, if we have all these problems, kind of what's going on. Not even so much behind the scenes, it's very open. So in 2007, you can see e-cigarettes first came onto the market from China. 2009, the FDA thought about wanting to regulate e-cigarettes as a drug or medical device. The e-cigarette companies sued to be regulated as a tobacco product. So the assumption there is that that's a little bit easier to get regulated as a tobacco product instead of a medical device. I've got a few things highlighted here because I want you to take note of this. In 2011, the FDA announced its intent to move forward with regulating e-cigarettes as a tobacco product unless the manufacturer made a quit smoking claim. Okay, then in 2015, the FDA finally issued its proposal on how it would regulate e-cigarettes. So again, in 2011, they had an intent to regulate. In 2015, 4 years later, they finally had a proposal on how they would do that. They haven't even started the regulation process yet. They just kind of have their rules set out. So during that 4-year period where they hadn't really made any proposals on what they would do, it was really the Wild West. Manufacturers could do whatever they wanted because there was not even an idea of how they would be regulated. So they really ramped up kind of what they were doing, their manufacturing, their advertising, everything they could to get those products out there. In 2016, the FDA finalized its authority, and on August 8th, they had regulatory authority over the e-cigarettes starting. In 2017, the FDA announces manufacturers will not have to submit e-cigarettes for review until 2022. Okay, so again, in 2011, that's when they first said, yeah, we'll start regulating these as tobacco products. They delayed. They finally said in 2017, we will, but not until 2022. So that's 11 years later. American Lung Association and a number of partnering organizations, Academy of Pediatrics, Lab Doctors Associations, American Heart Association, cancer organizations and societies, all kinds of health organizations got behind this and said, that's not appropriate. And we sued for this arbitrary and capricious delay. In 2019, federal judge ruled with American Lung Association and our partners and said that all pre-market reviews were due by May of 2020. So that basically means that all manufacturers would have to go through a review process before their products could come to market to be sold. In 2020, when that review started, we also saw, and you guys are probably aware of this, the minimum age of all tobacco sales increased to 21 nationwide. So we've heard of Tobacco 21. That's a big move, and that was really helpful because it included all tobacco products and e-cigarettes. So it's taking it away from you guys a little bit more, but we also had promise and kind of expectation from the Trump administration that we would get a ban or guidance around all flavored products coming off the market. Now, there's a lot of good lobbyists in Washington, D.C., so that policy got scaled back, unfortunately. And what we did see was that flavored cartridges, not including menthol and tobacco flavors, were prohibited. So that really just applies to the Juul type products where the cartridge comes off and can be replaced. Unfortunately, that does not apply to tank models that can be refilled. There is no guidance there. And it also is not a really forever ban. We know that manufacturers can come back through that review process before things go to market and could potentially have these back on the market. So we're making some steps, but we know that it's taken very, very long, and we're not necessarily getting the steps that we want to really make these protections. So how that impacts use. Remember,
Emily,
FDA.
You have some you have some questions. Actually, you have them in the chat. So
Okay.
Those for you. One question is, if e-cigarettes are so bad, then why is the police still letting teenagers buy them still? So, hey folks, put these in the Q&A because Emily cannot see the chat. She can only see the Q&A. So that's the question. If they're so bad, why are police still letting teenagers buy them?
That's a problem. So we know that anytime there are new rules and laws, that there's a lot of steps to go through. So Tobacco 21 rolled out, and it should be just blanket across the board that there is no allowance for anyone under the age of 21 buying these products. And really it extends back to the manufacturers not being able to advertise or target anyone under the age of 21. But that has to go through the shops. So that could be a convenience store, a vape shop. They have to have their policies in place where they are actually sticking to carding someone to make sure they are over the age of 21. Some stores, they really shouldn't even be letting them in. They should not have any advertisements, there's a lot of rules about where they can advertise, and specifically that they should have signs that let you know that you cannot be under the age of 21 and buy any products. But there's just a lot of room for slip-ups and loopholes, and unfortunately, we just don't know who is kind of on what side. So the police should be enforcing this. They are the law, but we don't know, how each individual police officer feels about these rules, if they want to go through the time of, writing a ticket to the shop, going through all that action that's needed on the punishment side to really make that enforcement happen. So good question, because it shouldn't be happening. And they should be, stores should be getting fined, but then we kind of run into who polices the police. So if police aren't making that enforcement, who is going to stop them and kind of catch them? So it's something that, unfortunately just went into effect last year, and we're still running through a lot of hurdles and a lot of roadblocks. And hopefully quickly down the road, we will see changes and we will see improvements. But right now, things are just not always going the way they should be.
Emily, I'll say that we are working with our local police who have done compliance checks to all of our vendors, our tobacco vendors in Brexville and Broadview Heights. They do them yearly. They are going to be doing them again coming up here soon. So they will send in confidential informants into the stores to try to purchase tobacco. And then if they do sell, then they will get cited. The problem with the law is sometimes, though, is that the person who gets cited is the person who is selling, which is likely a cashier or somebody at the store, who then oftentimes loses their job. And the Department of Liquor Control is who actually monitors the licenses for these vendors, if I'm not mistaken. And do they get a slap on the wrist? Most of the time. So so it's unfortunate. We do our best here to try to prevent vendors from selling, but ultimately, can kids? Here's the other thing: if a student goes in there, or a young person goes in there with a fake ID, you can't fault the vendor for selling. And there's a lot of kids who have fake IDs. Yep. So that's an unfortunate thing too.
Right. And you bring up a good point. We've tried to do this with alcohol for many, many years, where we send kind of that undercover teen in to, do that compliance check. And, the drinking age for alcohol has been around for much longer, and we still have problems there. So it just unfortunately takes some time to work out. We've got some good things in place, and I think over time we will learn what needs to be strengthened, where we can make improvements, and hopefully just get better and better at this. And the fines and the punishments will have more of a lasting impact. Okay, so going through that history, we just want to take a quick look at this graph to see how this kind of timeline impacted use among high school students. So again, remember in 2011, that's kind of when the FDA said, yes, we will start regulating these as tobacco products, but then they didn't do anything or even put that proposal forward on how they would make those regulations until 2015. So you can see over those 4 years, the rate of high school use went up from 1.5% to 16%. So a huge jump in 4 years, while the manufacturers were able to do really whatever they wanted. We do see a slight drop here for a couple years. And that could be because we start to get prevention programs, education, we start to kind of figure things out. Maybe some people start to see some of those adverse health effects that can happen and shy away a little bit. But then in 2017, we see this huge spike over 1 year. It's about 78% increase among high school student use. And we ask, why is that? If we, are supposedly starting to get a little bit more regulation information, we get more education on what this can do. Really, it can, at a very simple level, be attributed to the introduction of Juul. We know that Juul is extremely popular among high school students and youth. It looks cool, it's easy to use, they're not necessarily that expensive, they're easy to conceal at school, outside of school, around your parents, whatever, but that is really kind of where that takeoff happened. So currently, we've got some information from 2020. Our most recent data shows right now, use of any tobacco product among high school students is at about 24%. E-cigarettes remain the most popular product at nearly 20%. Rates are somewhat down among middle school and high school students. You can see that it went from 6.2 million in 2019 to about 4.47 million users in 2020. So you see, oh, that's great, that's a drop, but that's still 4.7 million users in 2020. That's a lot of students that are being impacted by these products, and that's still really problematic. In 2020, we see that almost 7% of middle school students and about 24% of high school students reported current use of tobacco products. Now, if you guys have ever done one of the surveys about tobacco use, you know that the questions can range from, are you currently using? Have you used in the last 30 days? Have you ever used a product? But current use is problematic because that's someone that is actively and has been using a tobacco product and will continue to. It's not someone that experimented one time or tried it a couple weeks ago and didn't really catch on. That is someone that is currently using. To see 7 in 100 middle school students using is really frightening because those students, again, have that developing brain, have a lot of pressure, not a lot of information, unfortunately, and can continue this into their life and just be really dangerous to themselves. We also saw that in 2020, about 3% of middle school students and 8% of high school students reported current use of 2 or more tobacco products in the last 30 days. This is also really problematic because using multiple products can lead to nicotine dependence and then higher nicotine use in adulthood. So one product on its own is extremely addictive. 2 products is really hard to get away from. So 3% of middle school students using 2 products is going to just be even harder to quit down the road. Let's see, we've got a question. How did they gather these results? So there are a number of different studies that go out. You can see from this graphic, I pulled this information from the CDC. Every year they try to do a National Youth Tobacco Survey of those middle school and high school students. I believe they're typically, not everywhere, but they typically try to conduct them through the schools. They're anonymous, so they're really just gathering this information from the students when and where they can. It's not comprehensive. It doesn't take into account every single student in every state and every school, but those tobacco surveys do go out regularly once a year to gather the rates of different product use and kind of where they are. What are the impacts of secondhand smoke from e-cigarettes? So unfortunately, because things are not very well regulated and we're still learning about this, there are impacts from secondhand smoke. So as you saw on that one slide, the picture of what can be contained in that aerosol, once that e-liquid or e-juice is heated, that aerosol is out. Now, typically that is being inhaled directly by the user, and you know that you're not seeing as much kind of vapor or smoke from an e-cigarette, but that vapor can still affect those around. So there's still impact of secondhand smoke because those chemicals are still in that aerosol in that toxic or dangerous form. So no, it might not be traveling as far as traditional cigarette smoke, but it still can get to people, nearby. It can still have that same impact of secondhand smoke and still cause those same health concerns. Okay, so we know, we've been talking about why these are so problematic, kind of where that regulation is. Why are these so popular? Like I said, in the history, the federal regulation has been extremely slow, so the market has been able to really do whatever they want, manipulate, especially youth, however they want for so long that it's just kind of, again, been the Wild West, and we haven't been able to control much for a while. Advertising is also unregulated, so they can really market to teens where unfortunately you guys are susceptible to that peer pressure and that advertising, and you're going to want to do things that are cool or look cool, use cool devices, something like that, so they can advertise how they choose. Unfortunately, celebrities are using these products and showing them off. You've got a picture of Leo here using an e-cigarette at, I think, a award ceremony or something. But you see people come on talk shows, you see people in movies and video games and TV shows using products, and you think, well, if they're doing that, that's perfectly fine. I aspire to be that actor, etc. They're easy to hide. So like we said earlier, the products can be small or they can be easy to conceal. So that's something that's really easy to get away with for teens. The flavoring has been a really big draw for a lot of teens. Fruits and candy and things like that make them more appealing. And then, you know, especially in adults too, we know of the safety claims. So for a while, and still unfortunately ongoing, a lot of the e-cigarette manufacturers either directly said or, you know, tried to come from a different approach and say, oh, well, these are safer than combustible cigarettes and you should switch to these. Unfortunately, that's just not true. These still contain nicotine, so they're still addictive. They still have a lot of harmful chemicals, so they can still really negatively impact your body. And we've seen that they really don't help people quit using traditional cigarettes. There was a study done that found that, you know, a group of people tried to quit traditional cigarettes by using an e-cigarette. The other group didn't. Only about 10% of those that switched to the e-cigarette to quit were successful in their quit attempts, while about 27% of those who quit without using an e-cigarette were successful. So it doesn't actually help you quit. It can lead to dual use. It can kind of lead you back into the tobacco world. And again, it can still be very dangerous to you. Is there data showing the transition of use from teeny use? There is some data on that out there. So there is some information. The questions unfortunately aren't broken down that specifically to see, you know, I was using this, now I'm using this, or kind of when I made that switch, if I'm using both, if I've gone back to a certain product. Unfortunately, we don't have that specific of questions and data, but we do see, you know, within those kind of 30-day periods, and if they are dual using. So we can see, you know, someone might be using two products, or someone has started using a second product in the last 30 days. Unfortunately, we don't know kind of when they made that jump, why they made that jump, if they've made a jump and stuck to it. So if they were using e-cigarettes and went to combustible cigarettes and stayed, or they just used both, we're not sure of all that specific data. I've got a few more slides that I want to go through with some information for teens and then parents and schools. So I just want to quickly run through this. I know class is almost over, but there's a lot of resources out there for you as students. So I've highlighted a couple here. American Lung Association has a page called Talking About Vaping. This is specifically for parents and teens to have a conversation around kind of the dangers, what they're hearing at school, what they are thinking about, etc. So if you are a parent on this call, that's a really nice site to go to prepare yourself for that conversation. A couple other things for teens. Unfortunately, if you have started and you're ready to quit and you know you need to, or you have a friend that you want to talk to, there's some resources out there for you. So the Truth Initiative is something that is aimed specifically for teens to educate and encourage cessation. They have a mobile-based quit program called This Is Quitting. My Life, My Quit is online or text-based, and that is run through the state. And then Smoke Free Teen is part of the National Cancer Institute, and they have a couple different ways to quit. So they have an online program. You can text to quit, and then you have text conversations and prompts with a counselor, or you can use the Quit Start app. So we know that teens are always using their phones, so that's really easy for you guys to use. You don't have to tell anyone. You don't have to, you know, be seen doing that. So if you want to make that start on your quitting journey, you can certainly do that at your time. And then finally, slides are still fighting me. Resources for schools. So American Lung Association really tries to put our focus in schools. We encourage every school to be a vape-free school and enact that policy so that students and teachers and everyone knows. We've got a couple programs for schools to help those students that have been caught using a product. And then we also have a program for students that are ready to quit. So schools can certainly use those. Schools can use the FDA's Real Cost campaign. That kind of shows the dangers, and it's a prevention model. Catch My Breath is a youth vaping prevention program. So that, again, is really good education for a school. And then Taking Down Tobacco is actually an advocacy campaign for kids to get involved from their school and be advocates and empower others to make that quit attempt. That is through Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids and CVS Health Foundation. So a lot of information here really quickly in these last two slides, but you can always go back and look into those sites on your own in a deeper process. I know we are almost out of time. I'm going to check this last Q&A here. Oh, that's the same one. Are there any other questions? I think, Kelly, you said we're done at 11:15, so I run up right to the end, but if we have any time for any other questions, I'll take them.
Emily, you were fantastic. Yes, we're trying to end at 11:15. If you have any questions, or if any students in your class have questions, please put that in the Q&A, and Emily will be able to answer those. Right now, it looks like another question just came in. For those online students, before I get off and let her answer that question quickly, in the chat box, I did put a link. That's just for the online students, which is linked to the evaluation. When you complete that evaluation, you will be entered into winning a $25 gift card. The students that are in class will complete their paper evaluations. So Emily, if you want to take that question, I will get myself off again.
Yeah, I was wondering if we would get that question because it's highly popular. How much marijuana is in vape? So that is a great question, and I did not bring it up because it's almost a whole other topic. But again, because the regulation is just now starting to come out and all those products are still in that pre-market review, we don't know. That is certainly something that you've probably heard of, and is definitely happening, that manufacturers can put THC into their liquid in those products, and they don't necessarily have to tell you. So some maybe might, and users are intrigued by that because they want that high from marijuana, but we just don't know. So unfortunately, with the regulations where they are, we don't have that kind of information. Hopefully those products will never ever make it to market, so we won't even have the ability to do any studies on that. But if somehow the FDA allows those to come to market, then we will be able to see how much is contained in those products.
Well, and Emily, I just wanted to say that one of the things that I think all young people should be concerned about is that the tobacco companies are very intentional, and they have been very intentional in their promotion of vape to young people, because by and large, they want to replace the nearly 3,500 individuals who die from tobacco-related injuries every year. So they want to get you addicted. There's a lot of research to suggest that if you start smoking before you're 19, there's a likelihood that you will continue smoking into adulthood. And they got that research from doing surveys with adults, asking them when did they start smoking. The vast majority of adults started smoking before they were 19 years old. So you just have to think, do I want to be manipulated by the tobacco companies? Is that something that I want to take part in? And we just never know when that light switch is going to go off, that you might just be an occasional user, or maybe you're experimenting and then you become addicted to nicotine. And it can happen very quickly. So, we really thank Emily for all this pertinent information. We want kids to be protected. We want them to make sure that they're making healthy choices, not only for themselves, but also that they're speaking out to their friends too, and making sure that they're promoting healthy choices among them also. So I want to thank Emily. I did get a question here posting about the Google form. I did post it. It's in it says to all panelists. Okay, I can't post that. So I'm going to send that actually to, let me see. I will send that out, and I will have one of my staff people post that right now to folks for that link to the Google form. Because I'm a panelist, you all can't see that. So let me do that real quickly. And Jessica, if you could hear, can you please post that? You can change the chat box option to all attendees. Oh boy, you guys are so good, but I'm not hosting this. So let me just have her post that really quickly. And Emily, you can keep talking for just a couple minutes and I will get that.
Thanks, Kelly. I don't think we have any other questions coming in, but Kelly, of course, brought up a really good point. Just to remember that the tobacco companies and the manufacturers are behind all of this. There is no doctor, there's no scientist saying these are okay, we allow this. Again, they just really, they want your money, they want to have your money for a lot of years, and they don't care about your health. So just keep that in mind as you're buying these products, where your money is going and who you're supporting. Are copies of my slides available? I can send those to Kelly so that you can have those. I know I went through stuff at the end there really quick, so that would be nice to have. So yeah, I can send slides to Kelly afterwards and you can get them from her.
Fantastic. And we were actually able to post that link into the chat box. So for those students who are online or folks who are online, you can take that evaluation and you'll be entered to win a $25 gift card. Emily, I can't thank you enough. It's been fantastic. You did an amazing job and I learned stuff also. So thank you so much. Thank you all for participating in the classroom. And we are going to end our presentation. So have a fantastic day. Have a fantastic Wednesday. Go out and enjoy this beautiful weather. And thanks again, Emily.
Thanks, Kelly. Thanks, everyone.